Hello, hello, welcome back. It is time for Leading Woman in Tech. I'm your host, Tony Collis, and today we're talking about the not so good, a roller coaster ride that is the 2024 job market, and specifically the job market for all of you amazing ladies, women in tech. If, like so many of the clients I've been working with this year, you are feeling the strain of job hunting, it has been a tough road, and you're not alone. We've had layoffs, not at this point of recording, not as many as in 2023, but still plenty of them. We've had loads of hiring freezes. They are still incredibly common. And the key thing is there is intense competition for the jobs out there. It's more challenging than ever before. I think it's easing up at the point of recording this. I think it is easing up, but when I say easing up, I'm like, it's slightly less bad than it has been for the last 18 months. It is definitely nothing like what I've experienced in the last decade. This is still the toughest period. It's just there's been slightly more jobs over the summer period than I think we had earlier in the year or across the whole of 2023. So don't worry. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to navigate this. We're going to have some practical tips, some advice, some strategies that I've seen working. We're going to talk through what hasn't worked this year. And I want you to feel a little bit more in control, whether you are in work and trying to do this alongside your day job and just feeling like, I have to do so much more than I did last time I did this. How can I possibly do this while working full time? Or you are out of work and the pressure is on. And I get that. I get that firsthand. So without further ado, let's talk about where the job market is headed and some lessons that every single one of us needs to take away from this year and when we might see things going in the future. We've had recessions, 2000, 2008, but we've also had tech job recessions specifically in 2015, 2018, 2020. There was that pullback at the beginning of COVID. But despite those setbacks, the market has always rebounded, right? Each time we have reached new heights in terms of hiring, 2021, off the back of that mini tech job recession in 2020, where just at the beginning of COVID, when everything just shut down, we saw a lot of people stopping work, being laid off. I don't think companies handled that well at all. But 2021 saw the biggest tech hiring boom ever. But as we know, what goes up must come down. By March 2022, inflation was out of control, leading to those rapid interest rate hikes and layoffs peaking in January 2023. That is the good news. The layoffs have peaked at the time I recorded this. I'm really hoping nothing changes between now and this going live because I am recording this a little bit ahead schedule and for recording this late summer. You're going to be listening to this in the fall. And I think this is one of these things where I think we're turning a corner here. But now we're in 2024. Layoffs are still happening, significantly fewer than a year ago, but there's still huge numbers. It's just a year ago was enormous numbers. The numbers today are roughly, they're not quite half, they're a bit more than half. We'll see where the rest of the year takes us. Well, they're not as bad as they were in 2023, but it's still horrific if you are job hunting. The job market is shifting, and it's essential to understand these changes if you are trying to navigate the job search. But here's the thing. The market will find a way to bounce back. And often, again, I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but it probably will reach new heights again. The tech industry isn't going anywhere. 2021 is the case in point here. What actually happened, and one of the reasons it was the biggest hiring boom in tech, is because everybody realized to deal with COVID, we needed to lean into tech. The world is coming to crisis upon crisis. We're seeing more war. We are experiencing climate change. I don't personally think you can deny that, right? We are seeing structural changes across every country. People are going to need technology to solve these problems and also technology to help us live with what we're experiencing. One of the reasons why technology became so prevalent during COVID was it was our way to stay connected and socialize and all those kinds of things. And, don't forget, we have tech just to entertain ourselves as well. That's all coming back. It is still there. It's just we've had to right size. Companies will hire like crazy again. Compensation will go through the roof again, like it did during COVID at some point. It's a cycle. I know right now it really doesn't feel like it, But we are in a cycle. Just a few years ago, I was working with a client who is a senior director of engineering, and she just couldn't hire someone because every time she would offer, a bigger tech company would swoop in with a deal she just couldn't match. But then came the fall of 2022. Inflation out of control. Countries started rising their interest rates to try and slow down inflation. And you can debate whether or not that's worked or not, right? But since then, tech is all about growth. And therefore, those rates have hit us hard, making prospects look really bleak. And that's when the layoffs started. There was, of course, a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy here because there's chat about job cuts and they spook people. So talent floods the market trying to get jobs, but there's fewer jobs. But in addition, the chatter makes companies feel less secure. Investors are going, we're not going to invest in tech right now. Is this a place to invest our money? There's less money to go around. Layoffs then become inevitable. So there is an element of like, we did this to ourselves. Well, did we? But the species did it. I'm not saying tech did it to itself. The species, to some extent, a lot of what we're experiencing right now is sentiment. Like, I don't think is too controversial, but it becomes self-fulfilling. We all start talking about recessions. Recessions therefore happen because we change our behavior as a result of that. What boomed during COVID had to adjust. But layoffs have peaked. But when we were peaking, one of the things that I've seen happening, which is breaking my heart, is less inclusive culture, pushing for the return to the office, because employers know that employees or potential employees have fewer options. By January this year, layoffs were still happening, but they were down 6% from the previous year, so a sign of things stabilizing. But what does it mean for us? Each boom and bust cycle leaves us with a really important lesson of how to navigate an unpredictable time. If this is your first one, it won't be your last one, my dear. Like, it really won't. If this is the fifth one you've weathered, hats off to you for still being here, right? A lot of leaders have had to move back to IC roles. That breaks my heart. There has been in my opinion, a very miscalculated idea that somehow management is a waste. Bad management, by the way, is a waste. But management itself is a waste, and we need more ICs, fewer leaders. So there's been a tough adjustment. I've had many clients who've come to me saying, I'm struggling to land a leadership position. Now, thankfully, only a couple of them have gone for IC roles and they chose to. But I think for those of us who aren't actively looking at how to weather this storm, it can feel easier to just go for an IC role because middle management in particular has been quite hardly hit. Compensation has also taken a hit, mostly due to bonuses drying up. Base salaries have only dipped a little bit, but the overall comp packages are just nowhere near where they used to be. Because during COVID, that tech hiring boom, people were just throwing silly money at us. But I want you to know this isn't all doom and gloom. Maybe the headlines are all doom and gloom, but some things are still going well. AI salaries, case in point, still on the rise. Demand for AI expertise is higher than ever, mainly because there are so few people who truly understand AI. We can all say we can use AI, but using ChatGPT does not make you an AI expert, right? AI and deep tech hires didn't slow down that much as traditional sectors like gaming and fintech. They've slowed down. But if you're in AI, you're probably still in a good spot. Same with cloud. We started seeing a recovery with top offers making a comeback at the end of 2023. And then this summer that we've just gone through has been very odd. Even in late June, clients of mine were still getting 5 to 10 organic outreaches per month on LinkedIn. That is just unheard of in summer in my experience. But it seems like everyone's just tired of waiting for the hiring freezes to end or for the economic outlook to get better. And everybody's going, we need a whole hire before the fall. So let's just go on with it. Rather than the traditional summer pause where everybody's like, it's hard to hire because everybody's out of the office. Scheduling interviews is hard. People are just cracking on and hiring. So if you aren't getting 5 to 10 organic outreaches per month on LinkedIn right now, we need to look at your LinkedIn because it should be working for you because it does for my clients. And speaking of changes, there are way more remote first companies now than there were 4 years ago, even though there's a push to hybrid and in-office work. Remote work isn't going anywhere. Forward-thinking companies are realizing, one, it gives you more of a talent pool, which I think is why they're going back to the office because they don't need the big talent pool because it's there anyway, right? But secondly, it saves you money not being in the office. People that actually look at the data have realized productivity has gone up in a lot of sectors by being remote, right? If productivity has taken a dip, it's because you've got poor leadership. It isn't because you're not in the office. Oh, that's a whole podcast episode in its own right. But this shift has meant there's more opportunities and flexibility. Now, I would say that is tough right now. I have a couple of clients who are living in places where they moved to for family reasons. There isn't a big tech sector there, but they need to stay now for family reasons, and they're struggling to get remote jobs because the remote jobs that are around are very, very competitive. But they are there. And what I would say is I think a lot of companies are going to come back to remote work. So if you can weather the current storm, give it a few years. I think more and more companies are going to see the real value of having remote teams. Which then brings me to our mental health around this. If you are navigating this market, you've got to have resilience. You've got to have a clear career strategy and a really good understanding of the current landscape. Yes, it's tough, but it's not impossible. That's the first thing to get your head around. 92% of my clients have landed jobs within 4 months over the past year. 92%. We used to be at 100%, but right now it's 92. So I'm saying like our numbers aren't as great as they were. But this statistic demonstrates that with persistence and the right strategy, you can succeed. The current landscape is absolutely challenging, but it's surmountable with determination and a proactive approach. The key is to stay persistent. Don't get discouraged by the rejections. Each application is a learning experience that brings you closer to your goal. After all, we want to treat every setback as an opportunity to refine your approach, improve your strategy. By maintaining the right mindset, you can then look at your long-term aspirations, and that is going to get you further at this point. It can feel like there's so much pressure to just take the first thing and figure out dream jobs later on. But with the right career strategy, the dream job is within reach if you put your effort in the right place with the right resilience. And I say that because we have a limited capacity for doing this work. It's hard. You do need persistence. You need grit, but there's still a limited capacity, even if you've got the most amazing, resilient brain out there. You will have to take longer than you've probably done in the past, right? It's just so competitive. Now, I say that. There's always caveats. We had one lady 3 weeks into working with us, landed her dream job, right? That's very, very unusual right now. That's happened one time this year. One time, right? But if you can have been prepared mentally, if you can take care of your brain so you stay focused and stay determined and accept that rejections are part of the process today, you don't let them diminish your confidence. Instead, review these rejections, look at them as what happened, how can I get feedback, how can I improve my approach? Each rejection brings you one step closer to finding the right fit. Embrace that mindset and the setbacks become stepping stones. We're all data-driven around here. I'm always looking for, okay, what's the data telling me? Are you heading in the right direction? Do we need a pivot? Is the data demonstrating that you'll get there? We just need to get the next step working. Or is this step that you're currently on not working? Keep that long-term perspective as well. Like if you are aiming for this in 5 years, what right now that's on the market will work for you? Don't just take any old job. Even if the job you know you really want is not available because of competition, and I would always sanity check that, by the way, still maintain that focus on the longer term goal. What jobs can give you something that's going to help you with that long-term goal? That is going to help your motivation and drive. If you're just like, I'll just take anything, your motivation and drive is just going to bottom out really quickly because the process is slow and you're likely to put more effort in than you've ever done. But if your effort is driving you towards something, it keeps you resilient and helps you get out of bed and push forward in the morning. So now let's talk about what your career strategy needs to look like. Today, many of us are finding ourselves overqualified, right? There is strategic positioning that comes in with you're overqualified for roles. You need to frame your experience in a way that matches the job you're applying for. This isn't about lying. I do not advocate lying at all, but it's about highlighting the aspects of your background that are most relevant. By doing so, you make it clear why you're a great fit for the position, even if your resume might initially suggest you're aiming too low. Now, whether you're overqualified or underqualified or perfectly qualified, how you present your experience really matters. Tailor your resume and cover letters to highlight the skills and experiences that align with the job description. This tailoring means that you can make all the difference in catching the eye of the hiring manager and getting through those initial screenings. It's about making your qualifications resonate with the specific needs of the role. Which brings me to positioning for something that's heading in the right direction for your career. A favorite question still in interviews is, where do you want to be in 5 years? And you need to know how you're going to talk about this role getting you to where you want to go. And ideally, lining up with what the company wants to hear for that career of yours, right? If you can plan ahead, you're ensuring that the role you're taking, even if it is a step back or a lateral move, maybe you want aiming for a lateral move. I don't think you need to take a step back, but some of us are feeling that way, right? Even if that's the case, you can figure out how is it going to build a bit of my resume. Maybe I need slightly more experience in this area, or I want to lead this particular kind of project because that's going to strengthen for who I want to be in 5 years. One, it helps you position yourself better at interview. But two, it is going to give you that sense of direction and purpose. Which brings me to the dreaded AI filter. These filters are very much not perfect. They overlook great candidates. It is very frustrating. And I think we're going to look back on this era and be quite angry about what it's done. Because I think what it's doing is meaning that the majority of people who are really good candidates are not getting through to a screening, a human screening at all. And it's seen as acceptable right now because if you're getting 1,000 applications, then it's fine to only interview the 20 that make it through, even if the best 20 didn't make it through. You need to know how these filters work. It's essential. And they're evolving all the time. I say evolving. They're being updated. The models are being updated. Let's go with that, shall we? I don't think we're not at the point yet. I would say that AI is evolving in its own right. That's a whole conversation. If somebody wants to come and have a chat with me about that, I would love to have that conversation on this show. Like, when is AI in its own right evolving? Like, my knowledge of AI is fairly limited, I will admit. I kind of get the general principles of how you train models and that kind of stuff. But like, when are we going to reach a certain tipping point, right? Yeah, message me. If you want to come talk to me about that, message me. I would love to have that conversation. But AI filters are programmed to scan for specific keywords and phrases that match the job description. They are programmed by a human, or what is sometimes now being done is they read the job description and then decide for themselves. So if your resume doesn't include these terms, it will get discarded before a human even sees it. A lot of the time, you don't even get an automatic response. You just get a nothing, right? Passing these filters requires a scientific approach. And this is where I'm very data-driven behind this. If 25% of your applications, you need at least 10 that are 2 weeks old to get this data. You can't put in 100 applications today and get 25% and say you've got the right numbers, right? You need at least 10 applications that are 2 weeks old or more, the way you've used the same technique. If you aren't getting 25% of your applications allowing you through to the recruiter screening, you need to tweak your strategy. You need to be looking at all the keywords in the job description, the different ways they're formatted, the acronyms. You need to make sure you're covering as much as possible and don't rely on synonyms, right? The AI, some of them it's just not that clever, right? There are filters out there that you can use to help you with this. They're very hit and miss in my experience. The other way I found to kind of up the number of keywords, when you don't have the explicit experience and you're competing against people who might do, put it in your cover letter. Say like, I'm really excited to join your company because you're working on A, B, and C, right? So you don't have the experience. You're not claiming it in your resume. You know, I'm a big fan of the cover letter. If you've listened to me enough, the cover letter is not dead. It is something we should all be doing. And it helps you boost your filter process, right? Because you can put words in there that are related to the job that you can't explicitly put in your resume because you genuinely do not have the experience. Also, avoid using headers or footers, as AI seems to just not know what to do with those. Some of the worst ones will just like the whole thing is garbage to them. So they just automatically chuck you out. Headers and footers should be absolutely avoided. Use bullet points for clarity. Make sure your contact information is placed where it's easily found. Clear formatting, no tables. I used to be a fan of tables. I'm not anymore. But don't be afraid to experiment with different formats and approaches. Try something for 2 weeks and at least 10 applications and then adjust. I know it's slow and it's painful, but that's what we're looking for, right? Trial and error is part of the process. So remain flexible, keep refining your approach, but don't refine too quickly. Get the data first, right? So for example, if you find that certain keywords are consistently missing from your successful applications, incorporate these frequently. But if a specific resume format gets more responses, then make sure all of your future applications have that format, right? Try things out, see how you get on. But the other thing I'm seeing happening now we're getting into the latter half of 2024 is networking. I feel like this has been a real roller coaster this year. There was a period at the end of 2023 and early 24 when networking was just, everybody was just done with it. People were not accepting referrals. There are still companies who will not take referrals. So even if you manage to get to somebody in-house, the referral means nothing. I have seen over the summer that has shifted back again. Referrals are now counting for something. I don't really understand why anything has shifted here, but personal referrals are now back on the table. So networking, especially the more senior, I mean, this has always been true for more senior roles. One, the majority of them are not advertised, which means the few that are heavily oversubscribed. So you need to get yourself networked in order to know jobs are happening, whether that's hiring managers, employees at the same company, executive recruiters, and you need to get back in front of those people, especially your executive recruiters. Once and done is not a thing. You need to be staying in contact with those executive recruiters at least every 2 months. You should try and have a coffee chat with them. You need to make sure that you are getting in front of the right people all the time, right? They're currently inundated. So you got to do it in a really good way that means they remember you and that you're helping them. And I see this is still incredibly important. More senior roles has always been a thing, but I see it percolating back down to more junior roles again today. And I think this is one of the things that is making a difference. Because if nothing else, if you speak to somebody, you understand the pain points of the company, put that in your cover letter in addition to what goes in your resume, and it can really help. Obviously, there is a time element to this. You can't wait 3 days anymore to apply for a job if it's public. You need to be applying at least within the first 48 hours, ideally within the first 24, which really annoys me, I will just say. How are people supposed to put together a really thoughtful application and have a full-time job in the first 24 hours? But when you've got 1,000 applicants and they're only going to interview the first 25, that's kind of what we're dealing with. And that, again, is one of these things that I'm just quite angry about. I will just be honest and say, this is something I think we're going to have a real reflection on in the next few years and look back at say, this was unacceptable. Because we need to put effort in to craft that high quality application. High volume is not going to work for you. High volume, high quality will increase your chances. It's not just about sending out resumes, it's about ensuring each application is tailored and compelling. But if you can get to the point 25% of your applications are getting through to recruiter screenings, then volume is going to help you. But every single one needs to be tailored. Everyone needs to have a cover letter for the job where possible. You need to highlight your skills and experience that align with that specific roles. Quality should never be sacrificed for quantity, but you do need to balance the two of them. So I want you to develop a process for yourself. This can help you maintain the quality while increasing the volume. Create a template for your resume. I call this the resume bank, right? The resume bank is the version that's got way more bullet points in there than you should have. It covers way more skills than you should have. It's still only the most recent ones. Remember, the resume isn't everything you've ever done, right? And what you're going to do is every time you're tailoring, you're going to cut things out more than you're going to add things in. If you add things in, they go in your resume bank as well. So you have a version for each job. Anything you add in or tweak goes in your resume bank so you don't have to rewrite it again in the future, right? You can use a tracking spreadsheet to help you understand where you're at in this process. Set aside time each day or each week for job applications to make sure you're consistent, prevent that burnout from like it just absorbing your entire life. If this is a full-time job for you because you're out of work, have times of the day when you network and times of the day when you apply. Treat it like a job and have a clock off time. Whether that's 5 p.m. or whenever, have a clock off time. And then it's about progressing through the pipeline. The hardest piece is this first piece, getting to the recruiter screening, which is why I've spent most of this episode on it. But you then want to get 50% of recruiter screenings turn into a hiring manager interview, 50% of a hiring manager interview turn into mid-stage, all the way through to offer. In my experience, if you can get to the final round, you need 5 final round interviews. So far, we've only had one person who's needed more than 5 final round interviews to land their dream job. That lady turned down 3 jobs before she accepted one, 2 or 3. I can't remember now. Everybody else, once we crack that pipeline, we get them through the filters, we get them to the recruiter screening, we get them through early stage interviews, mid and late stage interviews. 5 late stage interviews, you will get an offer you're excited about, right? This is something that you can crack. You can do this. I've seen this so many times in the last 12 months. You can do this. If you need help, we're obviously here, but there are so many resources out there right now, right? And we provide the coaching piece. If you're struggling with the mindset around this, if you want somebody to help you, right, understand the process. But there are job search workshops out there. We don't offer them, but there are workshops if you just need some pointers. They're a lot lower cost than coaching. There are career coaches who specialize in this. Now, they come with a caveat, which is make sure they understand your industry. We specifically target women in tech leadership, and that is a specific thing we specialize in. Somebody who's a generic career coach, watch out for if they understand your industry. It can make a difference depending on what your expertise is in doing this yourself. But persistence is your biggest tool here. Be well organized, maximize the opportunities that are coming your way, navigate things as effectively as possible, and be persistent. Tailor everything. Don't auto-apply. Oh my goodness me. Auto-applying should be banned. Should not be an option. Use the tools. If you're using LinkedIn Jobs, they now say what skills match. Go in and if you've got this, if it's suggesting you have 7 out of 10, look at the 3 that you don't have and look at, do I actually have those? Yes, I do. Go and put them in your resume or in your LinkedIn, right? That is an AI filter. Now, it's not the best one. It's not necessarily the one that anybody's using, but LinkedIn is using an AI filter right there to tell you what you do and don't match. So use that information. Improve your LinkedIn as a result. Improve your resume as a result. Even though I think it's more important now in your LinkedIn, for example, to have your skills under each experience. So each job, put the skills in the place where you've got space to write, put bullet points with an impact statement that says, I did this, and it links to the skill and the impact you had, right? This is what I'm a big believer of. Prepare those impact statements. I did this, we achieved this in this time frame. Get the keywords in there. That also becomes all the preparation for your interviews as well, which is why we only need 5 final stage interviews and you land a job, because basically once we get you to interviews, you're kick ass, right? Because you've done all the hard work with your resume. Tailor. Whether it's your resume, your networking, your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn is generic but tailored. I haven't talked much about LinkedIn. You need to figure out what jobs you're going for and tailor for that job. This is how you get 5 to 10 organic outreaches, even in the current market. And those outreaches tend to be for jobs that are not advertised, so they're not as competitive. You will still be put through an AI filter. So a year ago, I used to say, if you're going through the organic outreach and networking route, you don't have to tailor as much. That doesn't seem to be true today. Now you need to tailor your resume, even if you've been invited to apply. Again, I think we're going to have a bit of a moment because I think that's wrong. I think we're going to realize we've been putting people through a ringer that was not necessary or useful. But I think that is something we're going to see is really going to be important in a few years' time to have a look at. So in the meantime, though, make sure you know how to tailor your resume. I say to people, even if you're going the networking route, especially for senior leaders, make sure you can get through the filters in the process of just the application process, because that is going to mean that you're more likely to get through the filter when you've been asked to apply for something you're really interested in as well. So I want you to realize that the world is your oyster here. You can do this. AI is here to stay. I think we should actually all be embracing AI. I think there are ways the society is embracing in AI, such as these AI filters, that's worse. But the ability for you to learn and adapt to these technologies is crucial for you to stay relevant in the market. So people are looking for candidates who can navigate these tools, even if right now there's a problem with them. You need to showcase your adaptability. You need to showcase your forward thinking, your professionalism, the fact that you can work in this tech field, even if you are not a techie yourself. This is now necessary. I want you to lean into this because although this job market is one of the hardest I've seen, it is the hardest I've personally seen. You can do this. Get yourself 100 executive recruiters in your network who are looking to hire people at your level or above, right? If you are looking for smaller companies, try and get yourself in front of some VC firms. Many VCs have their own recruiting specialists and keep talented individuals in mind for future opportunities. They can open doors that might otherwise be inaccessible, right? Those long-term relationships with executive recruiters are indispensable in a tough market like this. Show your ability to network, to give back, So you demonstrate gravitas in interviews by having a great network. Ask your network to introduce yourself to key decision makers and influencers. One of the things I said to one of my clients earlier this week is go after that job like a dog with a bone. You've applied. Now find 10 people in the company to introduce yourself to. Where you've got a secondary connection, ask for that connection. The worst thing that person's going to say is no or silence, right? Go after a role like a dog with a bone. Offer help, offer support, offer introductions, reciprocate on your relationships, and then lean into asking for a little bit back. This is a hard job market, but with the right mindset, the right tools, that persistence, resilience, strategic positioning, you will land a job this year if that's what you're after. And remember, we're here to support you. So if at any point you want to have a chat with me or my team, click the link in the show notes and I'd be delighted to have a chat. Until next time, remember, stay in your tech leadership game and follow your dreams because the world really does need that uniqueness that you bring as a leading woman in tech.